I'm the Modern Therapist JD, and you're listening to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, presented to you by the Modern Podcast Network and the Modern HQ. Welcome back to the pod. Thank you for tuning in, sticking around with me. I've had a couple week absent. Just summer has came, and summer's doing its thing where you're enjoying life, where you're experiencing, where you're traveling, where you're focused on other things besides working, and that's okay. Life happens. Summer happens, and we should be enjoying it. So the same way I'm preaching to my clients, to people in my life, to take care of themselves, to enjoy, to take a break, to relax, I had to be kind to myself. I wanted to take a break. I wanted to relax. Yes, I didn't give any of the listeners that have been following along any notice about it, and I apologize for that. That is the part I played in this, but I am not apologizing for taking a break, for taking a reset, for allowing myself to rest, recharge, and get back to it. I was steadily pushing out content every other week, and that was what I was doing. And I feel like now that I took a little break, ready, energized, focus on what I'm doing, what I want to do this coming up year, I think we might be coming out with content every week. We might go back to the original formatting of a Modern Man podcast with weekly content. So I hope you all have been enjoying this 2026. It has flown by. It is already mid-July, which is insane. But that also means closer to 2027, closer to football season, closer to different things happening in our lives. Not getting specific, not calling anything out. I'm obviously just hoping life progresses in a nice manner and we all start to love, hug, and just care about one another. All right. And that kind of jumps into what we're going to talk about today. I do want us to care about one another. I do want us to pay attention to one each other. I want us to not be colorblind to one another. I think that's a little bit about what today's topic is about. Not necessarily just being colorblind. The specific topic is intersectionality. So not being colorblind, not being queer blind or orientation blind or gender blind or class blind, like none of the blindness. I want none of them. All the isms, don't be blind to them because they exist. They're out there, and just be aware of them. And that is what today's discussion, that's what the talk, that's what this podcast is about. We're talking about intersectionality. Who's heard intersectionality? If you're listening, I want you to think to yourself. Think about what you've heard about intersectionality. What is your opinion? What are your thoughts? How do you feel? What have you learned? Just sit with that for a moment. And now reflect on intersectionality from this perspective. Think of it a framework, in psychology, sociology, just in the study of human behavior that examines how various social identities, such as race, class, gender, sexual orientation, how these things interact, how they shape the individual person, how they shape their experience, and how they experience these systematic inequalities. So really focusing on these things, like I said, race, gender, class, your orientation, how these things intersect, the intersectionality, and how one experiences life and experiences systematic inequalities. Because based on how you're put into these different categories, race, class, gender, the system will then treat you differently. It highlights these aspects of the identity, which, yes, we can point out in isolation, but what's the point of that when really all these identities are connected and either give you privilege or oppression in some areas? So it's really understanding that no, just because you're white, that white means nothing. Just because you're black alone means nothing. Being a black queer man gives me way more understanding of what that person is experiencing. Being a black queer trans woman way more experience than telling me, oh, this happened to a black person. Oh, this happened to a Latino. Telling me that this happened to a specific, let's go, Ecuadorian immigrant, and talking about even their journey to America, getting even more specific to that, talking about their religion, talking about that. We can go, that tells me actually, who is this person? What kind of privilege are they experiencing? What kind of oppression, more importantly, are they experiencing? And how can I better assist and help this person? So yes, in the psychology, sociology, medical field, healthcare, all these fields, it's beneficial to really have a clear understanding of this intersectionality. It helps you with your client, your patient, navigating what did they experience in life. But the individual, you, just the average Joe Smo. Why does intersectionality matter to you? Why is this important? Why do you care about this? Well, you have coworkers. Usually there's some type of community workplace. Usually maybe go to your church. You maybe go, your children are in sports. You have a HOA. You have organizations that you're constantly connecting, talking, communicating, relating to different people who have different race than you, different gender, different class, different orientation, different life experience. And in that, you need to know how to relate to them, learn more about their experience, and how to just show up. So instead of assuming, instead of putting, oh, this person is a Mexican American, so they're going to relate this way. No, this is actually a queer, black, Mexican American who is a natural born citizen. Much different than Mexican American of indigenous descent, of a developmental disability, who doesn't have family support. Right? Like, again, it's helping you understand this is the person you're communicating with. This is the person I'm relating to. So maybe I should understand that, oh, they maybe experienced multiple levels of oppression, multiple levels. And I'm putting them in this box when I should not. And not saying now that you know the intersectionality, it's like, oh, I have all these intersectionalities, now I can better put them in the box. No, that's not what it's saying. That is not what it's saying at all. It's just giving you an understanding of the dynamics of the privilege and oppression that they are facing, so you can just maybe understand a little bit more about their experience. Still come, humble yourself. You don't know them. They're not like every other person of their experience, but hopefully you now understand that. And it helps you in how you show up for them. So I'm going to go through in the field. We usually do this with a client. I was going to say undressing. It works. Undressing their identities by using something called an addressing model. And the addressing model, it is an acronym, and why it's so easy to relate to a client. ADDRESSING, addressing. And the acronyms for each and the addressing model I'm going to go over. And as well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my identity. I told you on the podcast, when I bring these things in, yes, most of the time, 99.9% of the time with the client, it's all about them and relating and them. I'm putting them. I'm using the podcast to put my vulnerability out there, use the same stuff I work on with clients to talk about a little bit of my experience, how I've worked on that, how I've been through, and how it affects me. A little bit of the self-disclosure to where any of them listening, if they wanted to, then they can learn a little bit about me and my experience through this. So I'm going to go through the age, like age in your generation. There's different generations, the baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z. Now, the lost generation. Your generation has power as well as just your age. D, developmental disability. Just, we know, obviously from birth, these things being on the spectrum, being dyslexic, there's multiple developmental disabilities. We have disabilities acquired later, obviously for accident, drug induced, chemical induced, many ways. Life is life, and so disabilities acquired later in life. R is religion and spirituality orientation. Obviously, there's multiple religions in this world. In America, Christianity is going to be one with more power. We see how our country views Islam. We see how our country views Buddhism. Catholicism, obviously a branch of Christianity, highly viewed, highly respected. Mormonism, still branch off Christianity, much different views, much less power. Unless then we're talking about specifically in Utah, significant power. E, ethnicity and race. Talking about black, talking about African American, talking about Nigerian American, talking about Latinx, Latinos, Mexican American, like specifically, okay. And then we have your ethnicity, now's your race. You can be a white Mexican, you can be a white Latino, you can be a black Mexican, you can be a black Dominican, a black Brazilian. So what is your ethnicity and what is your race? Socioeconomic status, which is huge. We don't talk about in this country how important class is. We try to, we gloss over it, and then they want to turn it into a race issue, and it's definitely a class issue. S, again, sexual orientation. We have LGBTQ, baby girl, IA+, and then H for the heteros out there. What is your orientation? Because not only, yes, we know heterosexuals have more power, it's seen as power, but then even within the queer community, like a straight presenting white man, way more power than a femme Latino or a femme black man. Now, indigenous heritage. I for indigenous heritage. Yes, this is not applicable to a lot of people, but in that aspect too, knowing that, if you don't have any indigenous heritage, how lack of power that is, lack of knowing where you come from. N, national origin. Where do you come from? Where is that citizen? What is that passport? That book. Where's that passport from? What language do you speak? And G, last but not least, gender. How is the lens you're viewing the world coming from? Man or woman or non-binary? We know men have more power. We know women have less power. And then even more, non-binary is almost absolute power in in the nation. So I'm going to go through this addressing model through my perspective, through how I relate to these, through my identities, and talk a little bit about my relationship and my intersectionality with my shared identities. Let's start with A, age. I'm 32 years old. I am a millennial. I'm deep in it. Millennials are in the age of running things right now, I would say. I would like to take that credit of our generation. We're still waiting on the two generations ahead of us to fully retire and kind of give us the reins. But I think millennials as a generation are pretty in that, demographic. We're having kids, we're having families, we're getting married. We are the demographic that companies are marketing to, that they're making shows for. They want our dollars. They're trying to get us into homes. Like, our generation, I would say, is definitely in a significant position of power. I think Generation X is in a position of political power and financial power. They're hoarding the wealth and hoarding the political power. But I think in terms of social power, millennials definitely run social power. And as I say that, I would much rather have political power and financial power. And yeah, that is what Gen X is still holding on to. Gen Y, I think they still have a significant amount of financial power. I think not as much political power. I think they share a lot of views of millennials. So we'll get there. I'm curious how we take that step into financial power, maybe with inheritance, with things like that are left from Gen X. But very much feel uh, in power, just not in power where it really matters, like political, I guess, and financial power. Next, developmental disability. Do not have any developmental disability. No, I wish I could claim dyslexia. I do my best to engage in reading, to try to read as much as possible. It is definitely a struggle for me, just the concentration, the focus. It is up there. But no, I would say I'm a pretty intelligent human being. So no developmental disability. Excuse me. No developmental disabilities. Disabilities acquired later. Only had a couple surgeries ever in my life. Had ear cut in half. Boys will be boys, teenagers. And that is all. I did break my leg playing football, but never had surgery. And there was no others, like nothing, no type of disability acquired later. I think as I age, with the headphones, with the AirPod style, the original style, and listening to loud music, working in bars and nightclubs for a decade, I think my hearing will definitely go soon, by the mid to late 50s. So I think that disability will acquire later. But as of now, no developmental, and then nothing acquired later. Religious and spiritual orientation. This is one. Grew up very religious, very, very Southern Baptist. That was my thing. And with that came with a lot of power. It came with, I feel like, a lot of social power, inherent power, even self-righteousness. I'll just come out and say it. Now we're leaning towards the agnostic view, understanding that this is too fucking beautiful. Unless science is just doing his damn thing, like believing maybe there is some higher power out there, but not understanding what that is. Not really knowing, not really having that connection with that thing. And my mom and I are supposed to, all things go well, to go on a backpacking trip through Spain and Portugal. And it's supposed to be a spiritual pilgrimage. So that may raise my spiritual connection, my relationship with the higher power. But as of now, very much identifying that agnostic. And I feel like that drops me much less into not a position of power, having very little power, having more oppression. Because as I think maybe a decade or so ago, we were leaning towards a more secular culture. It definitely feels like over the past decade, we've shifted more towards a Christianized state. When we thought we were pushing away over the last few, and we can relate it to politics, because I feel like a lot of people do vote with their religion politically. And I even remember my mom growing up very much thought like, how are Christians voting against their faith? But there is separation of church and state, so there's that. But I think there's been a lot more faith-based voting of late, and just not just, we know abortion is on that line of very much in Catholicism and religious base, but just there's been talk, I guess, about just the way that I guess the left wants to live is an unchristlike way. And I don't want to get deeper in that. I think those are just the underlining tones of the messaging. And I don't believe with them or identify with them, but I just think that's the underlining tone of the messaging. So very little power, I think. For me, it feels like present day to speak about my religious or spiritual connection. All right, E for ethnicity and race. I am a very confident Black Afro-American. As far as I know, my people came over here without, against their will, on a boat, chained. And we just been working on the railroad for a few hundred years, and slowly but surely I made my way. And as a Black African American in America, I think you maybe have the least amount of power. If we're talking about all the races, ethnicities, just talking about race, not putting gender in that, I would say Black in itself is probably at the bottom in terms of power. I mean, we're the ones consistently getting murdered by the cops. We're the ones getting mistreated at restaurants, getting mistreated in any social situation, and it's okay. So I would definitely say Black. Maybe we can argue brown. I don't want to dispute, but very, very little power there. You can maybe put like the Middle Eastern brown in there in terms of maybe right with us, or I know during 9/11 time, obviously, I don't even want to compare. I can't imagine what they were experiencing. But yeah, I guess I am curious where I guess society views that. That's interesting. But I would say I feel society puts Black people on the bottom because whether it's internal and they just don't act on the feelings, I feel like people are more confidently willing to act on the feelings of their hatred towards Black people. And there's usually no repercussions. Yeah. All right, socioeconomic status. Now, yes, as a single man, definitely would say middle class by the money I make. By being a solo single man in Chicago. Growing up, very different. Growing up, very poor, poverty. From foster care to different foster homes to group home to then getting adopted, and then getting adopted and understanding like, oh, this is what white middle class life is like. Okay, this is different. So I got to experience that, and then that helped me want a different standard for myself because I didn't really know anything better when I'm young, when I'm in foster. Like, you eat those food. That's just what you do. Eating sardines, eating constantly bologna, eating Vienna sausages, eating so much processed food. Then, you get out of that and you get on your own. You have a different desire. You start to see life differently. And now, way more fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh life, paying for things, not doing things illegally. And it's just having that socioeconomic status allows you, yes, the freedom and flexibility to do that. But I think also just having that in those teen years from having that lower class lifestyle as a young child, but having those teen years, having that access to like think better for myself, to think that like, oh, this is the standard I want for myself. I think that's very important. And I think that plays a lot part into even getting into that middle class, like living a different lifestyle in the middle class. Because plenty of people in middle class lifestyle still eat hella processed food. Second S, sexual orientation. I would definitely identify as a heterosexual man. Very, very heterosexual. Yes, femme in all categories I am attracted to, but very much so heterosexual. Like when it comes to play, yes, you can throw the title heteroflexible out there in terms of sometimes, welcoming a hand, a body, some energy of another human into the space. But knowing who I am, knowing what I like to experience, definitely lean on the heterosexual side. And again, that gives me a lot of power because that's the consensus orientation in our city, that in our country. That's the consensus what people default to. They don't assume anyone is anything else. They just, the default's hetero. They're just like, so lots of power in that. Lots of power in me being able to say that, to act, to move through the world, to looking for a partner. Me assuming every person I want to be with is heterosexual as well. That's the inherent power that I have. Next, indigenous heritage. Not really applicable. I think also there's a sense of very little power because of the lack of indigenous heritage, though, in terms of not knowing where you come from, not knowing your people and how you relate to them and how you relate to the world because of knowing your people. I think not having this indigenous heritage is huge. It's a huge sense of oppression, a sense of never knowing your home. As a Black American who doesn't know where they come from, who parents probably, or ancestors probably came from 400 years ago in slavery, there's like this sense of this isn't your country. But no, we've been here just as long as the Pilgrims came, and those came with the French territory, and then the Vikings hiked over. Like we came with these people. So as much as you claim this is your country, this is our country, but there's this sense of like, no, this isn't yours. And yes, it's not ours from, beginning of time, but we also don't know whether we came from West Africa, what part. And so we can't claim that, and we can't claim this. So there's this very lack of, and this powerless feeling of like, I have no heritage. But this is our heritage. But again, these messaging that is not constantly rolling. In national origin. I am a natural born citizen in North Carolina, in the United States. I got that blue. I got that passport that'll let me get anywhere in the world. I thank whatever higher power there is, thank the Lord himself for that. I speak English. So much power in that. That English speaker, a good English speaker, so I can always go teach English anywhere in the world. Natural born citizen of a country that I have rights, that I have freedoms, that I can have beliefs. I am happy that I was born on this section of the globe. There's other places. Hey, I wouldn't mind be born in places of Europe, but the fact that I was born here, I'm happy about that. Of just talking about that identity of national origin, so I cannot be happier. God bless America. All right? Gives me so much power when I travel. And not being arrogant about it, but I know what an American passport is. I know what it's like living in America. I know the privileges I have of being an American. And it's just, yeah. If something happens here, my country's going to come fight for me. And more sense of like, no one wants to have a dead American tourist on vacation, like something, the embassy. Again, my country. Not sure, not taking shots. I don't know if Lithuania, if they got the same vibe. Lithuanian over in the Philippines, I don't know how much they care. I don't know. Maybe that could be a whole different tangent. But last but not least, gender. Yeah. This is one I definitely, I got some power. Oh yeah, I'm a man. Regardless of being a Black man, being a man in his 30s, I'm a man. I know I got so much power. We have ran this world, not giving women the option to run this world for thousands of years. We've just let them, have bank accounts 60 years ago. We let them walk outside without us. So I get it. I'm sorry. Yes, I got hella privilege. I know. I'm also an over 6 foot tall man. I've worked at bars doing different events, and like someone who's been there significantly longer is over there trying to get everything together, and someone's like just comes to me and just like assumes I'm in charge and knows what's going on, and I'll just take it. But I can see where a 5'2" woman trying to assert her like as the lead bartender there, and someone just comes to me like and I understand. I do have that power. I do have that privilege. I lean into it, yes, because I think, as not in the abuse way, but you should lean into your privileges. These are some strengths. So I do want to then stand upright, stand tall, stand firm, look confident. So then, okay, they see this tall, damn good looking, because come on, look at me. This tall, charismatic, I was like, I think that man's in charge. And it's just because I'm a man. Look, that's all it is. So my lens of the world is shaped because I'm a man. The way I view women is because I'm a man, and completely understanding this. I do my best to try and acknowledge this, to be aware of this, that I know there has a lot of privilege. But again, it's still going to cloud my view. It's going to be the lens of how I view the world. But that is me through the addressing model, my age, my developmental disability, my religion, my ethnicity, my socioeconomic status, my indigenous heritage, my nation of origin, and my gender. Again, you can go through many different identities and how they intersect, like short versus tall. You can do overweight versus underweight. Like all these identities, everything about these matter, and they intersect. They're just pointing out, we're talking about the person, how their identity interacts and affects their lens and how they experience and view the world, view and experience dynamics of privilege and oppression. I think this is valuable for anyone, not just therapists, not just psychologists, not just for sociologists, not just for social workers. It's for everyone to promote introspection, understanding privilege and marginalization, not just of themselves, but of their peers and of their community. All right. That is all for this week's talk on intersectionality. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something from it. I hope that it stays with you. I hope it ponders with you. So again, I tell you, I'll leave you with critical thinking each week. So my critical thinking segment question for this week is, now that we discussed intersectionality through the lens of the addressing model, how can you examine, how can you reflect on your experience, your identity, and what areas do you have power? Do you have privilege? Is it your age? Is it your disability? Is it your race? But then what areas are you maybe facing oppression? Is it your gender, nation of origin, sexual orientation? So examine that. Reflect on the addressing model, reflect on your identities, and see where you're experiencing some oppression, but then where do you have privilege? Okay, follow-up question for critical thinking. Now that we've examined where, how, what are our privileges, our sense of oppression, how does that affect you? How does knowing that your socioeconomic status is a privilege, how does that affect how you show up in the world? Do you want to change that? How does your religion, how does knowing that being a Christian actually gives you power? Is that something you want to lean into and understand that, and that's going to be a core strength of yours? Or do you maybe abuse that privilege and talk down to Muslims, talk down to Buddhists, talk down to someone who disagrees with you, talk down to, and sorry for Judaism, I didn't even mention Judaism here and where that aligns. That's a very confusing one. But I think it's something that we should all reflect and examine. So that's the critical thinking for this week. I really want you to reflect on your identities and think of that power and privilege. And then how does that affect you? And how do you want to navigate that moving forward? Thank you for tuning in to a Modern Man podcast presented to you by the Modern Podcast Network and the Modern HQ. My name is JD Ferrell. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Illinois. And I'm at the Modern Therapist JD, and I hope to see you soon. Have a great